Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here for Rampant Design Tools, and I'm back again with another tutorial. And in this lesson, we're going to create that cool glass moving across the screen look that you're probably familiar with from the CSI series of TV shows. Now for this lesson, we're going to be creating this look that you see in front of you inside of DaVinci Resolve 15. We're going to use the power of Resolve and the power of Fusion together to create this very cool look. And we're going to create this cool look very quickly and very easily. Now, before we get rolling, I want to show you specifically the elements that we are going to be working with. I'm going to Command or Alt and Tab into Google Chrome. I'm on the Rampant Design Tools website. I'm going to head on over to the Style Kits section to All Style Kits. And you'll see the elements that we're going to be working with are the Rampant Style Kits Simple Glass, and in this case, it's package 02. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to head on over to my account on the Rampant Design Tools website, and you'll notice that with this style kit, once you make your purchase, that you have 5 different we'll call them bundles, to choose from, and we're going to be using an element out of the glass effects right here. Okay, so what we're going to do, try to keep this introduction short, let's just get into Resolve and Fusion, and let's get started. Alright, so let's Command or Alt and Tab into DaVinci Resolve. Again, like I mentioned before, we are working inside of Resolve 15, and here is the shot that we were working with, or that I was showing you in the introduction. Okay, so let's get in and let's add our glass look to this shot. Now we need to head on over to the Fusion module. You'll see that we have our 2 nodes that represent our clip and we'll call it the journey that it's going to take from its original state right now all the way to our finished output. Now, one thing that I do want to do here is I want to move the media out, or what we're going to do is just rename this and call this output. We're going to move that node all the way over to the right, and we're going to keep this node that we're going to call footage over here on the left, just to keep things easy. Now let's take our Rampant Design Tools element here. I'm just going to drag it into my nodes window, and I'm going to call it up on the left hand display. I'm just going to come back here. There is the element right there. Again, the exact same element I showed you in the introduction. Now what's important to keep in mind about this element, you'll notice that what happens is that once it ends, the alpha channel, you'll see right here represented by the checkerboard, immediately disappears. And what's going to happen is that if we don't get in and compensate for that before we get rolling, we're going to run into a little bit of problems. So what we're going to do is, with this element selected, let's rename it. We'll call it Rampant Design Tools Glass Element 1. I'm just going to say OK. With that element selected, I'm going to navigate over here to the right to the inspector, and we're going to hold that last frame. Now, to be honest, I don't really have that many frames left in here. I probably got about 300 frames. Maybe we'll just put this in at about 600 frames, just so that I can make sure that this element stays transparent all the way to the end, which it does. Perfect. Now keep in mind, if we wanted to hold on this, we didn't necessarily want to have it start right at the beginning of our footage. We could also do that right here by holding it 24 frames, 48 frames, 1 second or 2 seconds, etc., etc. Okay, so let's get in and let's actually take these 2 elements and combine them together. What we actually want to do here, I'm going to put my footage on the right hand screen here just so we can see what we're working with. Okay. What we want to do is we want to have the Rampant Design Tools element here have this as a cutout and cut our footage out so that everything in here is transparent, and our footage is going to appear here inside of the quote-unquote panes of glass. Now to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to call up a tool. We're going to call up a channel Booleans. Now that's Booleans plural, not Boolean singular. And we're going to take that and add it into our node window. Now what we want to do here is we want to pick specific inputs. Now I'm just going to hover over the input to see that is the foreground. So we want to attach that to our Rampant Design Tools glass element. We're going to take our background input, which is right here. We're going to attach that to our footage. Now keep in mind, once we've actually attached those inputs to the footage, you'll see that if I hover over the input there, you'll see that's going from the footage output to the input of the background. Same thing up here. It's going from our glass element down into the foreground. So it doesn't matter where we move it. Doesn't matter what you see as far as those inputs bouncing around. We're attached to the foreground and the background. So keep that in mind. Okay. Now what we want to do with the channel Booleans, I'm going to call that up on the right display because we want to see what's going on over here. Normally what I like to do is I like to keep my master composite over here on the right, and then I switch back and forth footage on the left over here by simply using my display activation buttons right here. Okay, so let's take channel booleans. We're going to navigate up to the operation. We're going to drop that down, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to set it to multiply. Now, as soon as I do that, you'll now see that we have that CSI sort of look happening. Not quite, but we're on our way to having it happen. Okay. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to take the footage that's in here and zoom in on it just a little bit. Now, what I'm actually doing in this lesson is paying a bit of homage to Stephanie Mullen's fantastic tutorial that she did on working with these elements inside of Premiere. I highly encourage you to watch that tutorial because there's a whole bunch of great tips, not necessarily for, working in Premiere, but just great tips on working with these elements that you can take from that lesson and apply it to your workflow inside of Resolve. So we're going to link to that tutorial in the show notes at the bottom of this tutorial, so definitely check it out. So I'm going to pay homage to what she did here, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to do a little bit of a zoom in on our element. Now, before I do that, I want to draw something to your attention. Okay, now what would I want to draw to your attention? I want to draw to your attention the fact that these elements are 4K, and I'm working in a 1920 by 1080 timeline. So this element is actually way bigger than the frame that we're working in. So if I wanted to get in and manipulate this element, we can actually do that again by using nodes. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to call up a simple transform node. Okay, there's transform right there. I'm simply going to take it, we're going to add it in here. And what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to start adjusting. You'll see that I can adjust the size. It looks like it's actually cropping it, but it's not. What it's doing is it's shrinking the element down, and we can now take it and reposition it so that it's actually going to fit properly inside of the frame. We'll just zoom in on it just a little bit. So now we actually have the proper look of the element doing exactly what we want it to do. But what makes this very interesting is the fact that this now gives us the ability to take these elements and work with them however we want to work with them. Now you'll notice here that that's actually being cut off a bit on the left. So all I'm going to do is just adjust this over here like such to the edge of the frame, and we should be good to go. Very nice. Comes in on the right, goes out properly on the left, but you can see we can get in and manipulate these elements with that 4K frame size however we want to do it inside of our HD timeline. Very, very handy. And again, takes one element and potentially turns it into 5 or 6 different elements. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just zoom in a little bit on our footage. Again, we can do this one of two ways. I think we'll just actually use the transform node again. Now with our footage node selected, we're just going to call up transform again. Just going to say add. And what we're going to do is I'll just come back a little bit just so that our glass is more or less in the middle of the screen. There we go. Perfect. And we're just going to zoom in on that element like that. Okay. Perfect. I think we're now ready to combine our foreground and what's going to be our background. Now our background is actually the same image. So all we have to do is simply select it and copy it. And we're just going to paste that node right in here. Now we need to combine our foreground, which is all of these nodes here, and our background, which is going to be just this one node right down here. And to do that, again, another node, it's going to be the merge node. Okay, there's merge right there. I'm simply going to say add. Now keep in mind, we want to make sure that we're bringing in our proper foreground to the proper input on this node. There's foreground. Here's background. Let's see, is that background? Oh, that's the mask. There we go. Background's up here at the top. Drag it like such. And what we're going to do, click on the right display, and you'll now see that what we have is a very different look. We got a little bit of a zoomed in look as the glass is moving across the screen. Now we could be like, oh yay, that's great. We could leave it like this, but why? We want to take this work to the next level. So let's start doing that. And to do that, what we want to do is get in and make some more adjustments to the footage inside of the actual glass itself, which is right here. It's going to give it a little bit more space. I'm just going to zoom back just a little bit here. And let's add a blur node. I'm just going to select transform, shift and spacebar, type in blur. There we go. Let's add that. Let's take the blur, just a blur size, kind of like that. And what I then like to do is just add another node, and I love the brightness and contrast node. It's one of my favorites. With brightness and contrast, we have the ability to get in and not only adjust brightness, contrast, and saturation, but lift gamma and gain as well. So what we've now done is basically taken our element, added it to our composite, and you'll see now it actually looks like glass moving through the frame. Now, to be honest, sort of my favorite thing about these elements, and something that I always have to get in and adjust about them, is that they're just too good. They're so crisp and so clean, being 4K, that I actually have to get in and just dull them up a little bit, because for me, that's really how I like to have these elements look. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the Rampant Design Tools glass element, and we're just simply going to blur it just a little bit. Now we could do that at any point of this process. I think I'll do it after the transform node. We'll just type in blur. There we go. I'll take that. Now take a look at what's going to happen to the edge of the frame as I start to make the adjustment just a little. I'll do it a lot here so you can see. There we go. But I just want to have it just a little bit, kind of like that. Perfect. Now keep in mind, once we come back to our edit module, we need to make sure that we've connected that last merge node to the output, so that when we come back, what's going to happen is that Fusion and Resolve are immediately going to start rendering this clip. So we can go on, start doing other work, do whatever needs to be done while this is processing in the background. Okay? Beauty part is it's a very, very quick process, or a very quick render, and once it's done, we're going to be able to simply jump back to the beginning by hitting home, hit the space bar, and watch those glass elements move through our frame. So I hope this lesson has shown you that these glass elements are a fantastic element to get in and work with inside of Resolve to create very cool and very stylized Hollywood style graphics quickly and easily.